Good evening, listeners. It's me, your host, Ramblingramm. I'm here with some more stories to scare, shock, and horrify you. Or possibly, just possibly, let you know what's really out there in the dark. Enjoy, listeners. The Town That Ate People by I Enjoy Cake. A lot of weird shit happens in New England. If you live here, it's not hard to imagine why so many tales of the obscure, the horrific, and the obscene are birthed here. It's not the kind of weird shit that's happening in Florida, though. There's a sense of antiquity that permeates the air throughout the region, found through the wind blowing through creaky ancient homes, the plethora of decrepit abandoned towns, and worn, aged roads paved during the infancy of America. There was a small town in Massachusetts that I shall not name. Its rotting homes lay vacant, its stores barren and blanketed in cobwebs, and its people long gone. An ominous feeling chokes the atmosphere of the abandoned settlement, and few people are either dumb enough or brave enough to go near it. The only sound that dares to break the eerie silence aside from vermin is the rushing of the river that divides the town into two sections. An ancient rickety bridge still connects both sides, standing feebly over black waters. Many old small towns and villages are empty in elder states, fading into obsolescence as the young move away to join the modern world, and the old either follow or wither away into nothingness, leaving a settlement of only dust and bones. This is not the case for the town I speak of. Its people were content to stay there, and a community thrived on a mix of humble tradition and an acceptance of what the 21st century had brought. It was not their wish to leave, but they had no choice except to flee. For years a sinister presence lurked in the shadows of this town. Oblivious to the menace eyeing them from the darkness, people went about their lives in the most ordinary fashion as ever. On September 17th, 1999, 6-year-old Dennis Ackerman, a pseudonym for confidentiality, as all of these names shall be, left for school in the morning and was never seen again. The whole town was in hysterics over his disappearance. Things of note rarely ever happened there. It was all that people talked about for months as police and townspeople desperately searched for the missing child, combing over what seemed like every inch of land within miles of the town. After an entire year of searching for at least some tiny shred of evidence, town officials gave up on searching for the boy who had vanished without a trace. Dennis's mother was in absolute hysterics, inconsolably and understandably furious that they would just give up on the boy. In a rage, she stabbed her husband 63 times after he returned home from the bar that he had taken to visiting nightly after his son's disappearance. A neighbour heard her rabid screaming and called the police. The sheriff arrived to find Mr. Ackerman in a pool of his own blood, seeping from the visceral wounds covering his entire body. He drew his gun, anxious to find Mrs. Ackerman. It wasn't long before he did, as she dangled from a noose in the living room. The atmosphere of the town was never the same after that incident. People spoke in hushed tones, doors were locked at night, and relationships between friends, family, and neighbours grew colder. No one had left yet, but things had only just begun. Sunday, April 22nd, 2001. 2 young girls by the names of Lily and Delilah Aberdeen had been on their way home from church with their parents. Mr. and Mrs. Aberdeen were walking just a few feet in front of the girls when they noticed it was suspiciously quiet. Nervous, but not yet panicking, they looked for the girls with the notion that maybe they had snuck off to go do something naughty, or saw an animal and chased it. Minutes passed. Hours passed. Not a trace was found of the girls, and the police were summoned to help search. Identical to the case of Dennis Ackerman, Lily and Delilah had vanished completely without a trace. Neither were to be seen again. The Aberdeens lived under a dark cloud, their souls irreparably torn from the loss of their children. They divorced, and the former Mrs. Aberdeen moved away. Mr. Aberdeen, on December 11th of the same year, drunkenly stumbled out of the local pub and into the night, never to be seen again. His disappearance was taken less seriously. People slowly started to filter out of the town. Every few months or so someone would move away, driven away by sheer paranoia. I can't say I blame them. Things started to get much, much worse, following an incident in 2003. March 14th was an exciting day for the local elementary school. A field trip to the bakery in town was set up for the entire first grade class. The bakery was within walking distance of the school, so a cavalcade of chaperones were trying their best to herd a throng of bug-eyed 6- and 7-year-olds toward the bakery on Main Street. A little boy named Jonathan Macleod tripped and fell onto the sidewalk. His teacher, Mr. Patterson, rushed over to make sure the boy was okay. However, Jonathan was gone. It seemed he had vanished from the spot. Feeling his heart drop into his stomach, Patterson brushed aside the leaves of a nearby bush, hoping to see Jonathan peering out at him, ready to play peekaboo. He was not. Everyone tensed as Patterson began to yell frantically that a boy was gone. The kids were rounded up and were to follow another teacher, Mrs. Alloway, to the bakery and stay put while the others looked for Jonathan. The 5 other chaperones, all either teachers or parent volunteers, split up to search the area for Jonathan, while Mrs. Alloway called the police. Mrs. Alloway, spurting and huffing frantically into her phone, didn't notice how eerily quiet it had become on the way to the bakery. She turned around to check on the kids, and fainted when she saw that they were all gone. She cracked her skull on the sidewalk, and bled until her soul packed its things and left for the pearly gates. The entire town was in an uproar. 15 children had gone missing instantaneously, a teacher had died, and 2 of the chaperones had never returned. The media finally began to take notice, and the story of the town that seemed to swallow people was sensationalized throughout the nation. People began to lose their composure. Those that didn't just pack up their entire livelihoods and flee stayed behind and wallowed in an atmosphere of complete and utter despair. Fights broke out frequently. Houses and stores were broken into. People looked at one another with venom in their eyes and their minds. The police stopped caring. Paparazzi, desperate to get more information on the case, hounded those that dared leave their homes. Most of the town folks began to have enough, and started stockpiling rations and boarding up their homes from the inside. A naive amateur reporter from Boston, Louise Applegate, again, all pseudonyms, had shown up by herself to cover the story, with the hope that its current popularity would launch her career into the professional reporting sphere. Her hopes withered as door after door either refused to open or slammed in her face as she tried to interview different residents of the town. Desperate, she turned to trying to coax any information she could out of anyone on the streets or in stores. But everyone was either another reporter from out of town, or stone-faced and silent. Frustration brewed within her as each possible well for more info ran dry. She decided that she'd find out for herself. In the dinky grey jeep that she'd driven into town, Louise had stalled an ensemble of recording equipment. She'd spent the majority of the birthday money from her wealthy parents last year on a variety of cameras and their accompanying tools and gadgets. She spent the remainder of that afternoon fastening small cameras to trees, fences, poles, and even planted a few on poles in the ground. She probably planned to retrieve them all the following morning. She never got to. Her parents being of notable wealth and a degree of power, they made an uproar of her disappearance. Search and rescue teams, forensics, feds, all sorts were called in to find this girl. The residents of the town were as reclusive as ever, but with suits running all over town, people couldn't exactly refuse to give up information without getting a gun drawn on them. I spearheaded that search. I was the big man in the suit knocking on doors, asking the questions, intimidating the answers out of those poor souls. Louise's jeep sat in the same spot she'd left it in, and we already had that area taped off. Finally, after getting little out of the other residents, some dead-eyed old man told me he'd seen her putting up cameras at some point. I knew I had to find those ASAP. My guys found them all pretty quickly. We had to transfer the footage onto one of our laptops to watch any of it, and most of the recordings were nothing. But one of the cameras that she'd set up on a tree near the bridge had caught something. In this video, like the others, it started with Louise turning the camera on after setting it up. After making sure it was in place, she'd usually wander off to go set up another. But this time, I saw a large dark silhouette looming behind her. Before she could even take a single step, it lunged at her with lightning speed, covering her mouth with a large dark green hand, muffling her screams as it dragged her away. That was all I needed to see. I called off the search and rescue teams and shooed them away for the night. This wasn't just a missing persons case anymore. Someone, or something, had taken Louise Applegate, and it could be exactly what caused all of the other disappearances. I called for reinforcements, and within an hour they showed up with the extra men and gear we needed to start our manhunt. Guns, night vision headgear, flares, first aid kits, climbing gear, etc. Everything you needed to do anything outdoors was brought with to help us find either the girl, the kidnapper, or both. We started at the tree by the river and descended the small path that stopped just above the black water. I had teams searching all over the place, and my team and I followed this thin trail along the river. It was the direction that the perpetrator in the footage had dragged Louise, and the path was the only other way by the tree other than just turning around. The trail broadened a bit as it snaked alongside the river that twisted wildly through the woods that grew denser by the minute. I stopped in my tracks when I saw a clump of bright blonde hair wrapped around a damp branch, jutting out of the surface of the river. It matched the colour of Louise's hair that I'd seen in pictures and in her recordings. We had searched the section of river that ran directly through town for a body, but not this far down. Not even an hour later we had a few personnel down in those waters again. I was one of those that went. We found out that the river was far deeper here than it had been just a mile or so where it ran through town. We also found a cave entrance. No one else was finding shit on land, so the cave was the best shot we had at the time of finding anything useful. The cave tunneled straight down for a little while before winding upward again. I was almost shocked when suddenly my face met cool, damp air. The other members of my team surfaced and silently waited for my instruction. There was a little incline ahead, but in the light of my headlamp, I could see a tall ceiling above us. I went first, pulling myself up over the mossy, slimy stone ledge. I helped my teammates up and radioed my crew on land that we'd found what appeared to be a massive underground cave. I looked around, the light of my headlamp piercing through the oppressive darkness. On the cave floor, I saw bones. Human bones. I pulled out my gun from its waterproof case, and my teammates followed suit. There wasn't much else in this first area, and the cave wall curved to the right just a few yards ahead from where we stood. Slowly, and as quietly as a sopping wet mob of agents could be, we moved forward. When I rounded that corner, I saw something that I wish I could burn out of my mind with a bullet. We found Louise. She was in several pieces, distributed among several of these fucking things that were tearing through what remained of her flesh. Clumps of her long blonde hair were strewn about like confetti. A mountain of bones towered in the middle of this cavern. Like deer in headlights, these creatures stared at us wide-eyed and frozen. Their eyes were bulbous, dark voids that glistened in our headlamp beams. Their skin was a disgusting, pustulant, dark green reminiscent of a lumpy toad's. Rows of razor-sharp, triangular teeth protruded from their fish-like maws, and black talons gleamed at the ends of their webbed fingers. They were eerily human-like in stature. I regret not just shooting them on sight, but I was fucking frozen. There is nothing I am more ashamed of than that moment. One of them took advantage of my pause and grabbed one of the agents next to me, sinking its yellowing teeth into her throat. We opened fire, shooting wildly and desperately, knowing that we either would leave this cave alive or find ourselves residents in that mountain of bones. They hissed and squealed, their cries the most repulsive thing I've heard in my fucking life. They were so goddamn fast too. Explains how they grabbed people so quickly. Those motherfuckers moved lightning fast. I went into that cave with 8 people. I ended up leaving with 2. We took out as many of those things as we could, but ammo is a finite resource, and humans are very fragile and slow. They stopped coming for us when there was a huge pile of them bleeding to death on the floor. I pushed my 2 remaining men ahead of me the way we had come in, and we booked it the hell out of there. I fired behind us to make sure we wouldn't be followed. My radio had started going insane, because I had been taking too long to report again. I managed to blurt out "we're alive" before going back into the water and swimming as fast as I goddamn could. Help was waiting at the surface, and dragged us out of the water as soon as they saw us. I let my guys go out first, and as I was being lifted out of the water, I felt a hand grab my leg. I looked down and saw a disgustingly slimy green hand wrapped around my ankle. Fortunately, someone was paying attention and unloaded their gun into the water. A bullet or two grazed my calf and ankle, but fortunately, their aim was just good enough that I guess they hit that thing and its grip went limp. I got the hell out of the water, and we quarantined that area faster than you can lock your front door. I didn't go back down there, but we destroyed the hell out of that cave and everything in it. We dug and drilled holes directly into the dry parts of the cave, and lowered heavily armed squads down there. As many of those things were shot down as they could find, and as much of that cave that we could reach was lined with explosives. That cave doesn't exist anymore. I quit that fucking job after that. I'd already seen tons of shit, trust me. Serial killers, serial rapists, serial this and that, heads cut in half from brutal accidents, human body segments strewn everywhere. If it was horrible, I'd probably seen it. But whatever the hell these boogeyman shits were, was where I drew the line. I am perfectly content not going and looking for whatever the hell else might be out there. I am also not convinced all those things are gone. After our investigation, whoever was left of the townspeople booked it out of there. We'd already told the press to piss off, and they did mostly because we threatened to ruin or take their lives if they didn't. Rumours from curious visitors, tourists, ghost hunter types, whatever brand of idiot you want to call anyone that goes there. Those rumours say that people are seeing things in the water, seeing things darting through the woods, hearing weird noises as they pass through town. I'm sure as absolute fuck not going back. Why tell you this, though? Well, for one, who the hell is going to believe me anyway? Secondly, I've been craving the gratification, or maybe some kind of closure by sharing this with at least one person who might take me seriously. You try explaining this shit to your wife, or your therapist, or literally anyone who wasn't there without sounding absolutely bonkers. And for those who for some reason might be concerned for my safety for sharing this, don't worry about it. There are secrets and cases that will die with me. But this one, if they come put me down or arrest me for sharing what sounds like melodramatic crazy hoo-ha, I think I'd be better off anyway. Just please, please, don't go looking for weird shit. Let it stay out there, hidden and weird on its own. Just let it be, or run as far away if it gets too close. Don't be a hero. You will die. Well, listeners, I sincerely hope you enjoyed the tales that I brought you this evening. It would be a great pleasure to me if you would like, comment, and subscribe, if you're not already a subscriber. And please, please wait for me to bring you more tales, to alter your perception of how the world may really be. This is Ramblingramm, signing off. Good night, listeners, and sweet dreams.